Leslie, hi, Miss Bibby.
Let me start recording and welcome J.R. Clairborne, um, Tompkins County Department of Veteran Services. So thank you, J.R., for showing up.
All right, thank you. I had so far to go. But thank you, and I appreciate the invitation. It's always good to be a part of, have something to reconnect me with GIAC. I think I've been part of the GIAC family since probably before 2002. I think I got adopted when I was a reporter and I had to come over there for a story in like 97. So I've just kind of never left.
You got no choice to be part of the family at this point.
This is true. It's literally part of my family. So I'm there. But yeah, thank you. I think I know, actually I know everybody here except Miss Joan. You're a new face for me, or it's been a while. Yes, ma'am. All right. You mind telling me your rest of your name?
Oh, is Vicky. I'll bet you're sorry you asked.
Oh, I love hearing names. Don't ask me to remember it later, but I love meeting new people and their names. All right. And you're here in town?
Yeah, I was here years ago and then left for a few years and then came back in 2003.
Okay.
So I've been here since then.
So you're part of the
Over on South Titus. Lives over on South Titus.
That's right.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Yeah, I'm always amazed at the number of people I hear who lived here and left and came back.
Yeah,
And they joined those of us.
There's a whole book about it.
Oh, really?
Is there really? There might be.
You go around and collect the stories, right?
The Odyssey. I mean,
Yes.
Oh.
everybody
Oh.
has to come back to Ithaca.
That's what it is.
Okay, okay.
And then there are those of us who moved here and never left. Despite all intentions, all stated intentions, we're still here. I've joined that number. Yes. So, yes. Oh, and Miss Bibby, I missed your reading a few weeks ago.
Oh.
I wanted to go to that, and I think something was happening, and then I saw the flyer again Wednesday, and I put it somewhere that I would see it, and then I didn't see it, and then I think that Monday I saw it. I was like, no, I missed it. So I apologize, but I hope you had a good turnout.
Yes, it was really, really nice.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah.
I know it was something great there you had.
Yeah, well, it was with St. James. It was actually an event of the St. James Missionary Group. So it was really good. Just enough people. The weather was perfect. So we could be distanced and masked and all of that. And there were dancers. And Mabel sang for us.
Okay.
So it was good.
Oh, that was nice.
Yeah.
That would be. Okay. Well, I kind of feel, I think most people here know me, but I'll go ahead and dive into some of my background. Maybe I'll fill in some blanks for those of you who don't. But again, thank you for the invitation. And I'm trying to find my website here. Zach told me, when he told me you were inviting me, he said that this was kind of your Meet the Public Officials group, and gathering. And so it seems funny to come back to the GIAC Seniors group for my fourth time, I think, but
in a different position each time.
Different position, different hat, yes. So for those of you who may not know me as well, I've been here since I came here in the fall of '96 as a reporter with the Ithaca Journal. I was covering the criminal justice beat, cops and courts.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was.
I didn't know you'd come here as a reporter. That's cool.
Yes, it was my first job out of school at KU, University of Kansas. So the Jayhawk landed in the Finger Lakes area. And yes, and I covered crime, basically crime and tragedy in some respects. I cover people either from their arrest through their sentencing or sometimes their exoneration. There were a few people who let me know when they got off, and we put that in there. Also, if somebody was in an accident, I followed them from their accident through their recovery. So got to really see and meet some really amazing people who had some incredible journeys to tell. I stayed on that beat, on the crime reporters beat until I think it was about 2000. I got promoted to the assistant local editor's desk, and later became the acting metro editor when our local editor left. And I stayed there until 2002. And then I began my own odyssey of Ithaca, going from, I held different positions at Ithaca College, at Cornell, at CDRC, and as Leslie knows me, at Loaves and Fishes. I was their advocacy coordinator there for 7 years. I started as their first outreach specialist, and then became their advocacy coordinator for the next 6 years, which I learned a lot. I thought I had a good grip on everything around here, especially in the social services network, but being advocacy coordinator and being tasked with trying to plug people directly into needed services, I learned a lot more and was really good. But that also complemented my other hat at that time, which was being on the City of Ithaca's Common Council, where I represented the second ward, which is primarily the flats of downtown, with the exception of Fall Creek, and the very bottom of West Hill. In between all of that, well, during and in between, I also, wearing the civic duty hat, I was on the board, well, Planning and Development Board is what they called it, which is akin to a board of directors for Big Brothers Big Sisters of Tompkins County. I was also on the former steering committee of the Village of Ithaca. And also, I was on the Second Ward Democratic Committee. Actually almost started there, having left there as their chair. I came in and trying to get folks excited about the Carl McCall campaign, because when he ran for office, when I had just left the Journal, and I could actually get involved in politics and campaigns and stuff. And I was like, wow, we got a Black man running for governor and no one's doing anything, And I just grabbed a sign and started asking, where do I get more? And I met folks with the county's Democratic Committee, and they were like, hey, we need somebody in the ward committee. Why don't you take that over? I said, no, I just got here. Let me do something. Let me meet the folks with the Carl McCall campaign. We'll move from there. Then like a year after that, I became the chair. So, and that was actually interesting, because that really had me dive headfirst into the whole political waters of Ithaca, which is very interesting. It's a very interesting upstream swim, continually, to say it nicely. I've also been on the counties. Before I started with the county, I was connected with the county as a volunteer with their Public Information Advisory Board, which basically we tried to help things that were dealing with public outreach and communications from the county. And then lastly, talking about the GIAC connections, I was on GIAC's board for a good many years. And I, sadly, but for a good reason, I left the board for what has to be one of the best reasons you would, which was my wife became the director. So, and there's something about some rule out there that says I can't be my wife's boss. The irony in that one, though, is that when I was on city council, Leslyn was then the deputy director at GIAC. So I was technically like her boss's boss. So I guess it's not quite the straight line. But now, since I've joined the county, she's still on the county legislature. So now we've reversed roles. And now she's my boss. Exactly. Hey, Jerry.
Didn't you run for mayor too about the same time Sponte got big?
I did. We were in the same campaign year.
So I thought I remembered that. I was still living downtown at that point.
That was the year everybody wanted to run for mayor, it seemed like. We had I think we had 7 for the most part, but I think at one point we might have had, I don't know, say 9 to 11 people running that year for mayor. But yeah, that was the same year Savante ran. So the 2 of us were on common council and everybody else was kind of around. So that was a long year, and one that I've put out of my memory.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to bring it up then.
No, it's fine. It's just one of those things is you don't realize what it means to run like a year-long race until you get to the end of it. And it was kind of a little self-rewarding when after the election, Savante just said publicly he was taking the leave so that he could catch his breath. So he took like a couple of weeks off. I'm like, wow, at least somebody I felt vindicated in some respects, but the others like, wow, I can't take that break. But yeah, so I was there. I've also been pretty much since 2005, I've been on the board of directors for the United Way of Tompkins County, which I've really appreciated being there. That's a good organization that does many good things. And it just feels like each year I've learned, each year I've been there, I've learned new things, and they've allowed me to stay around. So I guess they like me. And currently I'm on the board of directors for the Ithaca Voice, which has been kind of exciting because it lets me get replugged back into my journalism roots. Although being on a board of directors for a nonprofit news organization is not quite the same as running a newsroom. So that's been an interesting journey.
However,
And,
if you want to know about Ithaca, you go to the Voice, not the Journal, because Journal has dumped all their Ithaca people.
They have one person now. And another piece of irony that you mentioned that, Leslie, when I was first hired at the Journal, I was introduced to the staff as completing the full roster for reporters, and that was 9. It was 9 people. When I was promoted as the acting local editor, they lost 2 reporters, and another reporter had to go. I think one was going on vacation, and another was the weekend reporter. So they had to have 2 days off. So my first day in that new role, I had 4 reporters where there was, I think 7 at that time. I'm like, wow, welcome to the neighborhood. No challenge there. And also the other hat that I still wear too is I'm a current member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, our chapter in Syracuse, which is Chi Pi. So it's and most people know about about the fraternities and sororities on college campuses. But for Black organizations, Black Greek letter organizations, it really is a lifelong commitment. You come in and you can choose to stay active all the way through life. There at our national meeting last year, there were people that were getting their like 70 and 80-year pins.
Whoa.
Oh,
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Our organization was founded in 1911. So there are some people who, not that long, but there have been some people who have been around a good while. And like just to be able to sit on their shoulder and just hear their stories would be something amazing. I haven't had that opportunity yet, but I look forward to that day. So kind of fast forward to today, as introduced, I'm the founding director for the Tompkins County Department of Veteran Services. And I do get to say founding director because there wasn't one before. The county opened when they enacted the legislation during the year of 2019, that made it operational, but until they hired me and opened the door to my office, that's what made it become real. So it's cool to be able to say that. That's part of history that no one can take away. Coming in here, I joined the American Legion, which was part of my requirements because I had to seek accreditation within my first year and a half. And actually, I was able to double that. I got my accreditation with the American Legion, but also with the New York State Division of Veteran Services. And what accreditation for them means is that I can speak directly with the VA U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs in my role of advocating for our veterans, and be it checking up on their claims, calling on their behalf or something else. So it's pretty cool to be able to say that. And if you go to the VA's website, you could actually, if you look for find a veteran service officer, you'll find that I'm listed on the VA's webpage, which, having come from the Navy, I left that part out. I was in the Navy. That's how this story should have started. I went out of high school right into the Navy, spent 2.5 years active aboard the USS Nassau, which was a former amphibious assault ship. which means we were like a small aircraft carrier. We had a flight deck for helicopter and Harriers. And Harriers are the jump jets that the Marines fly. They can take off and land vertically, which are really fun to watch. And they can take off in a straight like a plane in a short distance. And we also had a well deck for what they call beach assault craft. So like in the movies, when you see the Marines charging out of a boat, like a tailgate drops and they come charging out of the water onto the beach, we carried those kind of watercrafts. So yes, so I got from there, jump back to today with my role with the county's Veteran Services. My main role is connecting our veterans with our veterans, their families, and our current service members with benefits that are available to them on the local, federal, and state levels. Leslie, you look like you're about to ask.
Do you also work with the Cornell veterans people? Because I've been to several of their meetings and it seems like they do a pretty good job of trying to get people integrated into the Cornell community as well.
Mm-hmm. I guess before I say yes, it depends on which part. They have a few different veterans groups up there, but I'm on their list. I'm on their listserv. I'm connected with their newest group, CUVA, the Cornell Undergraduate Veterans Association, which just opened a house. They have a house now on campus, and they are,
neat.
Yes, they're the first veterans house in the Ivy Leagues, and they're one of, I think they said there's only 5 in the country of campuses that have housing on campus for their veteran students. So that's been pretty cool to be around them. Except I'm part of the Cornell Veterans Colleague Network Group. I think that's what they call it. I'm not sure if that might be what you're thinking of.
I'm not sure. I know that my middle granddaughter was interested in the Air Force, and I took her to several events up there where we toured all the memorials for veterans and talked to some of the people that are giving resources to the people coming on campus, for their GI Bill benefits.
Yes. Okay. Well, that's cool because they actually have a person in that position, a hired position. I think she's the second person, but I think that position itself has only been 5 or 6 years old.
That would be about right for Carolyn.
Okay, that's cool.
And do you work with like red, white, and blue also?
Yes, I'm actually a member of RWB as well. I'm there. I forgot the name of the role. It's like Veteran Recruitment Specialist, I think they call it. And basically, same thing I do in my daytime job, I can do with them as well.
Neat.
So
Neat.
they've been great to work with as well. And actually, one of the things that I was doing with them was a service for our department. We had something called the Veterans Coffee House. And that was, I speak of it in the past tense because COVID kind of put a foot in everything. But it was basically kind of like a happy hour, a networking time for our veterans community. We meet here. It started out actually at the South Side and then moved it here to my building in the large conference room. And we basically brought veterans together, provided light snacks, some of the resources for veterans around town. We would let them come in and speak with those who came. And what was really cool on our last one, I mean, she had to go out with a bang. On our last event that we had here, it was the same day that GIAC's team program had I think it was their soul food luncheon. And so the Kiwanis was working with us. So Kiwanis, myself, or my office, I'm a department of one. I left that part out. So let's say my department, talk about we, it's really me. Until hopefully if the county's budget goes through, I'll get me a half person for next year. So crossing fingers on that one. But yeah, so myself, the Kiwanis and RWB, we just kind of pooled our money and bought a bunch of dinners from the GIAC team group, and we just kind of set our little buffet. So everybody who came got to have a soul food dinner, which they thought that was just the best thing. But then we also asked them if they could stay around a little bit because we had a little surprise for them. And what that surprise was Senator Schumer, Charles Schumer, was coming to town, and he was coming to make a big press release. He's kind of making a barnstorming tour about having expanding the list of what's called presumptive illnesses for the our veterans who were in Vietnam, involved in the Vietnam War. So, and ironically, or coincidentally, I should say, the majority of the veterans that day were Vietnam era. And a few more actually came over and joined us for the press conference. And so we had I should have pulled that up. We had, you know, the headlines the next day is all our veterans standing around Senator Schumer, you know, in our building. So that was really pretty cool. That was
That
a
is
good,
neat.
yes. And then COVID hit. We didn't get to have it again. So go figure, right?
Right. So are you also involved with the parades when they do the Veterans Day, Memorial Day services? Or not specifically?
Tangentially, I'm not there, but I was brand new at the time. So I came in, I started in late July, or actually at the end of July. So the next Veterans Day, then the communications director, she had already had some things going with the parade, so I just kind of joined in. And actually this year I finally made contact, I think, with the folks who run the parade. So we've been, yes, thank you.
The picture you're looking for?
Yes, that was it. So that was kind of cool. It was like mostly all of these guys, with the exception of the guy in the dark blue vest. And some of you may know him. He actually used to be the senior investigator for the state police. So all of these guys are right around here. I think there are a couple of them are right over the line in Cortland. And then you can't see Mike Moran, but he's standing behind the flag. The guys in the vest are part of the Vietnam Veterans of America chapter. And I think, you know, Ralph, some of you know Ralph, you know, Mr. Salisbury. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm that little guy off of Chuck's shoulder, Mr. Schumer's shoulder.
And
Look more
wearing
like
a
Jiminy
tie.
Cricket or something there. Yeah, it happens some days. Every so often I get to break one out. But yeah, that was a fun day, just to say that we were all there and we got to have a real fun-filled event. Another service that I offer with my department is two things. One is I have a listserv that I've been collecting veterans who I encounter and their family members, if they'd like. I join our listserv, and then I send out information on occasion that's related to veterans events and veterans news that's happening. And one of the bigger things we have or ongoing has been Warrior Riders, which has been pretty cool. Warrior Riders is something that was already established. I cannot take credit for it. The only thing I can say is I get to house them. They were meeting in our building, but also with COVID, we moved to virtual, which has been pretty successful. And Warrior Riders is it's a program there. Basically, we come together, the group facilitator gives us a prompt. He reads us a story, he reads us a poem, tells us an account of something happening in a veteran's life somewhere. And then we write in response to that based on our military service, or it could be any experience before or after as well. And through that, a lot of times people are writing about things that may have been suppressed. It may have been something that they've been wrestling with. It may have just been, you know, an event that they by writing about it, it gives them time to process it for the first time. And then we all read those things to each other and we critique them. So that's been a pretty cool experience there. I've gotten to get my writing chops back in order by being part of this group, which has been pretty good. And it's been pretty much, we've had everybody from, our members range from the Vietnam War era up into the present, well, now former conflict. Still getting used to saying that one.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. Although you're housed in COFA, do you provide services for any veteran regardless of age or what war they were in?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, I'm the one person here that doesn't have an age limit.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really weird that I shouldn't say weird, but it's contrary to what most people would believe. Most people if you serve in the military, you're a veteran. However, the VA looks at it as you had to serve 24 months, so 2 years, if you entered after 1980. So anybody who was in before 1980, as long as they served one day, they're in. But if they served after 1980, they had to serve 2 years to be considered a veteran by the VA.
Do you know why that was done? Why
I
that
do
was-
not.
Mhm.
You know what? I do not. It hasn't come up. They usually just say, this is what it is, and we just keep moving. But now that you've asked me that, I'm going to have to find out.
I mean, what I'm wondering is if someone has to be in for 2 years, if they're in for a year and they actually see combat of some sort or are injured, does that mean they don't get VA services?
Well, there's always an if for everything. For if you had to be retired militarily or medically, then you would be covered because that happened while you were in service. And so those folks are still considered, not only are they considered a veteran, they have a direct tie with the VA because they would have received a disability rating. So they could say that they're a disabled veteran. But the other part of weird to me about this, I will say weird because I'm still getting used to this. A lot of our folks who are joined the Guard in the reserves, they're in the Air National Guard, the Army National, or Air National Guard, the Army National Guard, or the reserves, any of the reserve components. And one of the other things I learned here is that if you serve in only the reserve component and you're never called up federally by order of the president, you don't qualify for VA benefits afterwards.
Huh.
So unless you have been activated by the president. So if you've been active federally, you've been sent overseas, even like when January 6th happened in DC, there were some National Guards members who were actually called from other states to there. So they would count, as long as they completed their tour of duty there, they count as veterans. They will be counted as veterans when they exit. So but those who get called up by the governor are not. But fortunately in New York State, there are an array of benefits for veterans in New York State who served. And so they get to, I think they still have to have a time requirement, but they do qualify as veterans. But for anybody just joining the street, you know, if somebody who served in uniform, yes, you're a veteran. And my office entertains anybody that I can help.
You also mentioned that you basically had to join the Foreign Legion in order to qualify. I've never really thought of the Foreign Legion as being an official group. I thought it was a private.
It's the American Legion.
The American Legion. Okay.
The American Legion, yes.
Like American Legion of Foreign Wars, is that it?
I would have demanded a field trip. I needed to go to the headquarters in order. But no, it's the American Legion I'm a member of. And which is really cool about that for me is that my pops was actually in the American Legion. So I alluded to this earlier, Kansas is home for me. So I grew up in Kansas. And so my pops was part of our American Legion chapter there. And as a high school junior, I got to go to the American Legion Boys State, which is really it was a really immersive experience into civic education. Are you all familiar with Boys State and Girl State?
Mhm.
Not very much. No.
Yeah.
Okay, I see some, yes. So basically you, for those you don't know, you run a whole state. You have a city and town boards. We don't have towns in Kansas. You have city boards, county commissions, the state legislature, and you have the governor and secretary, those higher up offices. So I actually was elected our Secretary of State when I went. And what was even better with that one, I also was one of 2 people who were elected later to go to represent Kansas at Boys Nation in DC, which is really, that was an eye-opener.
Wow.
Great experience. So that's these ties for American Legion. It's amazing that it's kind of like Ithaca. I left it and now I'm right back with it again. I've had great experience. So that has been fun. But yes, ma'am. So yes, it's the American Legion, not the Foreign Legion. And now you're saying that, I'm going to think we have to figure out how to work that in, that we should take a road trip or an air trip. So I am part of what's called the New York State New York State County Veteran Service Officer Association. Say that fast 3 times.
Yeah.
And that's an organization of all of the VSOs within New York State, Veteran Service Officers within New York State. Every county is required to have a veteran service agency. And so this basically, that organization comprises all of the state. And for those of you who are doing the math and wondering, yes, Tompkins County was one of those counties that did not have a veteran service agency until recently, although it's been a requirement since 1943, I believe, 41 or 43.
So was
And-
it one of those founded mandates where they told you to do it, but they didn't provide the money to do it?
Yeah.
That could be. I don't know. I've not been privy to that information, but what I did know is that the state had a Department of Veteran Services, well, then it was called Department of Veteran Affairs office here. And I believe that because that was, the state had a resource here, had an office here, that the county was able to just rely on that.
Ah,
And apparently, as I've been told by various few people coming from different directions, that a lot of people weren't happy with not having the county having its own agency here. And so a lot of people pushed buttons and made phone calls and complaints and cajoles and good things to try and make it happen here. And when things lined up, when the now former county administrator himself was a veteran of the Coast Guard. And so between him, my wife, who has veterans in her family, so the military has been really important for her. You know, they pushed and moved and got some things happening, and my office was here. And my appointment here, it is coincidental, but not causal, I guess, if you want to say, to her being on the legislature. I mean, they had when they made the announcement, they said that there were 38 people who were interviewed, and they brought that down to a field of, I think, 4. And I made it through all 3 rounds. So yes. So I like to say, I think they think I did something right, and I'm doing more right.
I have 2 questions about the services that you provide.
Yes, sir.
One is are there veterans from any particular war right now that you find you are dealing with more in terms of numbers? And number 2, what kind of services would you say are the most sought after by veterans now from your office?
Well, the veterans that I see the most are Vietnam era, and primarily Vietnam War, people who were boots on the ground, boots in the water, in and around the whole DMV area. Mainly because they are veterans who are dealing with a lot of the ailments related to Agent Orange. So a lot of those are either they've already been dealing with it and they've already been connected, they're service connected, or things have gotten to a point where they've heard from a friend or an old service partner, like, hey, you got the same problem as me, you should put in a claim with the VA. So those are a lot of the folks that I see. The main types of claims are really related to those ailments. There are people who are trying to get service connected and compensation for their injuries and their ailment conditions. And the other thing that I'm learning with this is that it takes a very long time sometimes for the VA to make a decision. So there are people who have gotten decisions in as short as, I think, like 6 months. And I had somebody who just unfortunately got a denial after a year and a half. Last week, I was at an event for for people like myself at Veterans Expo. And one of them had somebody who's still fighting something after 4.5 years. And when I actually first started this job at the boot camp, the Veteran Service Officer boot camp, one of our instructors told us he had somebody actually had just gotten a decision while we were at the boot camp, and that capped off 15 years.
Wow.
So
wow.
yeah, it's really, I don't get it. I'll put it that way. I don't get it. I haven't been in long enough to say I have to say I get it, but I know that one of the things for me coming into this job, and I'm fine with admitting that this is the first time I've had a job with as steep a learning curve as it does, as this one has. Because the book, actually, I can show you, one of the books that I have to learn, I have 2 books. You can see the size of it and the thickness of it. I have 2 books like that that I'm supposed to learn. And also there are changes happening every day from a congressional standpoint. And so anytime there's a law that they change, then that adds pages to that book. But there are also court cases where a veteran may have been denied, no, not may have been, where a veteran was denied a claim that they put in for, and they've appealed it all the way up the food chain, so to speak. And at the top of it, the courts, the Board of Veterans Appeals has agreed with them. And that in itself created a new precedent and sometimes a new law. So it's always evolving. And I had someone tell me though, they said like, it's 5 years. You have 5 years before you get a grip on what's happening. So, and then you're still learning. At that point, you know, you have enough information that you can learn easier. So I find this all interesting, and I've learned to get a little more comfortable with that sense of not knowing. But I also have, because of my local connections here and how well I know the service connection network, service providers network, that I have a few other skills that I can lean on.
So I have an uncle who's head of a VFW unit in Pennsylvania. One of the things that they do a lot is work not with living veterans, but making sure that veterans who die get appropriate cemetery space markers, replenishing old markers. Do you get involved in any of that? Making sure that your people are treated respectfully if they pass away?
Not as deeply involved as your uncle, but yes, one of the things that family members can make claims for is markers to have VA sponsored or paid for burial markers. And that can be the headstones themselves, or they can get a smaller plaque that can go either on the ground or be affixed to a headstone. There's also a thing that's called a medallion. It's like yay big, and it says veteran on it. It doesn't have the name or detailed information, but does have veteran in a branch of service. So I can help process the paperwork for that and submit that claim. Also, one of the duties I was given when I got here is each year for Memorial Day, our veteran service organizations, primarily the VFW and the American Legion, coordinate the distribution of flags for the cemeteries around the county, and make sure that each veteran's flag gets each veteran's grave gets a flag on it. And so I'm the provider of the flags. So that was interesting, because when I got here, they're like, oh yeah, JR, here's something you have to do. I'm like, really? So, but that's been fun. That's been fulfilling in respect that I'm able to help make those things happen, and then to go and see the cemeteries and see the flags waving. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's neat.
Yes.
I've been there when they've been putting them out at Lakeside and University cemeteries both times. And it's remarkable to see.
What happens to the flags after Memorial Day?
They get collected, but I'm not sure at what point and when. But I know that there's some that I think I've seen some stay out there a very long time, but then there's others that I've seen that they're gone. So I'm not sure. I know that there's some that seem to show up at the Veterans and Memorial Day events. So there's probably some that are extra that are given out at those events so that people can have something to wave and show their patriotism. But now that you ask, I'm going to ask that question, because that's going to sit at the back of my mind now. Because we're buying new flags every year, so that's a good one to know.
How about the Watchfire event? Are you involved in that?
Tangentially, I've pretty much been a spectator, that is the fun part, because that means all I got to do is show up. I don't have to do anything But last year when they had when they couldn't have it, the ROTC unit at Cornell worked with RWB and Team RWB and the VVA, and we did a video, basically a video. Instead, we did a video watch fire, so to speak, and it was a tribute to each of the members whose bios were submitted, and each of us read the bio of one of their members, and they were shown that veteran's face was shown during the course of reading it. And I had the privilege of doing the welcoming to the video. So that was pretty neat. And then this past year, it was pretty much just trying to help get the word out, circulating that it's happening and helping people get out there. But that is a fun event.
Have you found in dealing with the veterans of various ages that you've come across that veterans have a pretty good idea of benefits that are available to them, or is it a pretty steep learning curve for the veterans themselves?
It really depends. It depends on how much they know or what they've heard. A lot of people have heard something, and that's the grapevine is very strong in the veterans community. And so a lot of times it's someone will come in and say, hey, I've heard I can get this and that, and I want to apply. Other times there are some who they've already started their history with the VA long before they've gotten to me. So they've got to know, like in situations where their condition has deteriorated, they've known that they can get more help, more compensation through the VA. So the biggest part of that really, and I've had the misfortune of having to tell a few people that they don't qualify, is really looking at what helps you qualify for the VA, for VA benefits when it comes to compensation. And that basically is when you're filing a claim for compensation, it's usually due to a health-related condition or injury that you've developed, that a veteran has developed. It has to be something that occurred during or was exacerbated during their time in service, or something that occurred directly because of their time in service. So like folks who were exposed to Agent Orange, they may not have developed something for the first 5, 10 years or more after their time in service, but something kicked in later. So in doctors, between what the doctors and the literature out there, it can be shown that their condition is because of their exposure to Agent Orange. But for someone like myself, I'm considered a Cold War veteran, because when I was in, we were no active time of conflict, even though there were conflicts happening. So if there are things that happened to me during my time of service, then those would be things that I could file a claim for and try and apply for some kind of compensation. But there's not anything that I would qualify for if I wasn't in any kind of designated conflict zone. So I've had a few people. I've had somebody who was they got out a month before the Vietnam timeframe for Vietnam era. And I had someone who they started, I think, a day before Vietnam. I'm sorry, they started the day after Vietnam, the era for Vietnam. And that's kind of, that's sucky to tell someone like, no, you don't qualify at all. Like it's not even worth putting in a claim to see what'll happen, because you won't get approved. So that part sucks. But excuse me for saying that way, but that's what it feels like after you have to tell someone that. But fortunately, there are some things, like I said, New York State has its own array of benefits that not everybody can qualify for, but there are some things that veterans can apply for.
Now, outside of medical benefits, are there things related, well, there must be something related to education, but also things like housing or jobs?
Yes.
Are there services available for vets for that?
Yes, actually, here locally, we have a few things. Like for some veterans can qualify for property tax exemption, which is always good. I should say veterans and their spouses. So like if if a veteran passes, the spouse can still qualify as long as the house was in their property in that name at that time. Through our county clerk's office, there's what's called return to favor. And that's when a veteran has their DD 214 scanned into the system of for the county clerk's office. And that basically is like record preservation, because the clerk's office is our local our local record. How do you say that? Our local source of record. I think that's how I say it. So basically, if anyone who takes their discharge papers to the county clerk's office and has it put in their system, and 5 years later, or even the next month later, they need it because the dog ate it, it got wet, they lost it, they can call the county clerk's office and it'll be sent out as a certified copy. So that's been a real good thing. And for those who do that, they can also get their picture put on like an ID card, and that's for the Return to Favor program. And that's for businesses that actually offer a discount for veterans. So that's been pretty cool. So if you excuse me a second, I just my light came on, and so now I'm in the shadows. So let me turn this off. I'll be right back. Excuse me. One of
In
the
the
things
meantime, you can look at his webpage.
Thank you for that, Zach.
Yeah.
And actually, if you like right there, what you're looking at, those are on the side are links to different places around that that seem to be good places of reference for folks who might be looking for something related to the veterans services. And then all of that in the middle describes what my office does. So in answer to your
Burial
question,
benefits and grave markers.
yes, Ms. Joan, there it is. Healthcare, benefits, compensation, pension, home loan guarantees, getting veterans records, military records. That's been one of the harder things of late because of the whole, everything comes from the National Archives, and during COVID, they shut down. And then they've been bringing people back little by little, but they've got a serious backlog. So that's been a lesson in patience to try and help people try and navigate that. One of the things you'll see there Zach, if you'll scroll up a little bit, under veteran services, those first four, those are different sections on my website. So I was just talking about the resources that we have. And I mentioned the county clerk and return to favor and the property tax exemption. Also, veterans who have their DD 214s can get their veteran status put on their driver's license if they take it to the DMV. The county itself has its own program where you can get extra credit, or they have veterans who are are prioritized in the hiring process. And then through Workforce New York, they have the service they provide. They have something where veterans immediately get front of the line status. So if they come and say, I'm a veteran and I'm a job seeker, then there's someone or a staff member who comes up. Usually that staff member is a veteran who comes up and they work with them personally. So Zach, if you can go to New York State Division of Veteran Services on the side, on the left. Yes. So I was talking earlier about the different services offered through New York. Yeah, that's some of bragging about all the things that are happening here. But across the top there, go up a little more. Yeah, see, it says advocacy, assistance, education. Those are all different things that New York State has for services for vets. One of the things I know they've been pushing a lot, and there's some veterans who've been helpful, I mean, very thankful for, is that they have two different programs to help get veterans who had a less than honorable discharge, be able to access some benefits. So there are some veterans who had dishonorable discharge, and there are those who've had a bad conduct discharge. And those are folks who are pretty much shut out from accessing any kind of benefits, regardless of what they may otherwise be eligible for. And these are programs that helps look at their situation, look at their circumstances, and then try and build a case to help get their status. It may not change their status on paper, but it does open a door to allow them access to benefits, to some level of benefits. So I don't know if that makes sense the way I said that, but it's been helpful for some folks. So it's basically the VA has its own way of, even if a person would not normally qualify for for VA health benefits, so to speak, because of the character of their discharge, there are some things that they can make exceptions for. So it's not quite the monolith that it feels like, but there is a little bit of human touch there. Okay, I was going to say, go back one more time on my website.
Your website.
Yes. Under news, I mentioned earlier my listserv. Normally what I send out on my listserv, I also try to put on this page here, and these are just, like I said, news and events that are happening around town that are of interest to our veterans community. So it's not everything, but I try to put in things that come my way. So, and next week, you'll see that there's a link for Veterans Day. Next week, hopefully by then I'll have that new page relaunched, and it'll be an update for things that are happening this year. And one of the things that's been exciting about that, I've been working with a small group of people, and we're trying to basically coordinate and collect all the events that are happening around town for Veterans Day. And we're doing this with the goal of having both the city and the county proclaim Veterans Week. So instead of just November 11, we're going to be having an observation from November 6th through November 13th. And there's not every day, but at least once a day, almost through there are different things that are happening for our veterans community. And so this is going to be cool to try and get word out in that way. And hopefully we'll build a good program and recognition that, veterans will feel more comfortable, more welcome, and more accepted across this whole county.
How many veterans are there in the county that,
The last estimate I saw is 4,100. And that number is changing probably daily because we have people who move in. Unfortunately, we have people who pass. We have people who move away. But that's been the number that the VA has given us. And so to say I'm one person to serve an audience of 4,100, that's a bit.
Yep.
So I guess when I was on council, it was 6,500, but I got to split that with somebody. So nature of work is a little bit different. So yeah, so it says archive now. So you would see what I had on the page last year. But you can check that next week, and hopefully there you go. And there'll be a lot more about the events that are happening around town or around the county.
Yeah.
do you think that some of these will be repeating?
Yes, there are quite a few things that'll be repeating. One of the things that I'm excited that is happening, I can only say it's in the works because I'll only know when it actually happens. But you see there says Green Light Event in the middle.
Yeah.
So there's a thing called Operation Greenlight. And this is something that I just learned how important it is. Actually, the New York State Association of Counties, as well as my state organization, the County Veteran Service Officer Association, are really behind Operation Greenlight this year. And what that is basically asking everybody to put their porch light, change their porch light to green, at least for the week. For the week of Veterans Day. And that's in showing the support. And you see there, it says green symbolizes hope, renewal, and well-being. And this is basically a big show of support to our veterans community to say that we thank you and we support you.
Neat.
Yes. And that support really, I think for a lot of folks, just the symbolism of knowing that they feel accepted, that our veterans feel accepted and appreciated goes a very long way, because there are some people who did some things that they're still carrying that specter for, and they're not felt appreciated. So this year, we're going to, the county right now is working on having all of the county facilities green lighted, at least having one light and one prominent entry. Also, I've got a request to the city, and I'm going to see if I can get some more requests out to see if other folks will join us.
Where do you get green light bulbs?
Actually, Lowe's, Home Depot, and Walmart are supposed to be carrying them.
Oh,
And I'm going, if I can find some more that I can get a hold of, I will be doing that as well. And then I can be a place of distribution too. But at least those places do.
Hmm.
So that's going to be pretty cool. And if it happens, I'll be very excited. And then I'm also working, I'll also ask you if you're interested to tune in on that page, because I'll, just like you see there, I'll have a list of all of the things that are happening over the course of the week. So I know right now, like on Saturday the 6th, there's a movie that's going to be shown at Cinemapolis called This Is Not a War Story. And it's a story of some veterans who were really, they're really, as I understand it, trying to process what happened with them and their service, and really taking a hard look at the causes behind veteran suicide. That's really a big thing. And it's one of the things that even got me into this job was the attention needed for veteran suicide. It used to say 22 a day. I just learned the number is as high as, I think, 27 a day now is the estimate of veterans who take their lives on a daily basis. And for me, the motivation for me to even apply for this job was one of my shipmates became one of those statistics. And, so it's something about statistics, you hear them on the radio, you hear them on TV, 1 in a million, you can win, you have 1 in 20,000 chance of getting the lottery. And it's just like, yeah, okay, whatever. But when you have some part of the statistic that hits home with you, it really puts things in a different light. And so that's been part of my focus, is being here, is being able to serve my fellow veterans in a different way. So yeah, so you'll see all of that populated with new things by next week. And keep coming back, because as I get more events happening, I'll put them in there. And you see, like I had additional community events, had to have GIAC listed.
That's right.
Had to make sure. So if you're going to do the Harvest Fest again, it'll be back there again.
Oh, well, it's already set for the 19th. So.
Oh, it is. All right.
It's another delivery or pickup thing, but it's happening.
Okay. If you can make sure I'm on that distribution list, I'll get it put out.
Okay.
I'll get that put in my page. But it's on the 19th?
Yes, it is. You just have to change that one number, and I think everything else, and the year, but
2021.
got it.
All right. I think I can make that happen. Thank you for that. See, look, I'm taking something away here. Flags. Cool. Okay. Well, if there's anything that you guys have questions about, please feel free to go to that website to see if you can find an answer, but I'm also easy to find, to get a hold of. I think you all know one direct connection to me, one direct way to catch up with me. So please, I don't know if there's any other questions. I feel like I've answered some, but I may have missed something. This is something I like, so it's easier for me to talk on and on and on. So cut me off as needed.
Well, you covered a lot. If anybody has a last question here, feel free to chime in.
Well, I just want to thank you, because this has been fascinating.
Mm.
I was delighted to hear all the things you're doing, and to just know that there are people out helping our veterans.
Yes, there are a good number of folks here who are, and one of the things that I've learned since I've been in this role is that, and for me personally, it took me a while to even acknowledge myself as a veteran. And I think there are a lot of people out there that are like that, because I just looked at something last night. There was something on PBS about the American veteran. And if you haven't been in the middle of a war zone, you feel kind of weird putting yourself on the same level, equating yourself to someone who was. Like I said, I was on a ship, I was in the middle of the water, dealing with helicopters and Harriers. I was not in the battlefront. And so because of that, I did not think that I even could qualify myself as a veteran, let alone wear that label. But as I got older, and especially here, I learned from people around here that, like I said, if you put on the uniform, for the general public, if you worn a uniform, you've answered the call, you stood in harm's way, or even you put yourself in a potential of harm's way, you served our country. And so that's been really good. And that's been something to try and help promote, letting folks know that if you wore the uniform, you are a veteran, and having them come forward with that. I think that number of 4,100, I think, is probably drastically undercounted. I can't tell you by how much, it's just my feeling for it, because there are a lot of folks that you only find out when they're a veteran when it comes up in conversation, or there's something that's out where people can show their veteran status. I think just like you hear about most stories, a lot of the veterans never show it until something comes up that has them do it. And please, those of you, I'm thinking Miss Bibby or some of the others, if you've got experience, please correct me, but that's just been my experience so far.
Well, maybe we'll draw this to a conclusion, but really appreciate your time, JR. Really interesting.
Thank you very much.
Talk. And nice to see the rest of you all. Thanks for showing up.
Thank you.
It was also good to hear the rest of your story.
Yeah.
Yes. I've got a few things happening behind me. But I know that I'm one of many stories here in Ithaca. So I've always been amazed at how many, I can see why people think that Ithaca is the center of the universe, because there are a lot of things that happen here. The one of the most exciting for me is when I learned that Roger Stern lived here. And for those of you who are in the comic book world, especially DC, Roger Stern was one of the people behind Superman.
Oh.
So the original comic. So yeah, So he attends the Ithaca comic book convention, but I met him when I was a reporter and I had to cover the comic book convention. Met him and I was like, wow, you're him. And what's funny is I met him again last year, I think, 2 years ago. I took my daughter up to the convention. It was up at IC now. It used to be at the Women's Community Building. They do it at IC, and I brought my daughter up to him and I told her who he was and introduced ourselves. And then I told him how I remembered him. And he's like, wait a minute, I remember you. We just had this whole conversation, got into all kind of comic book lore and technicalities and everything. We learned the story behind Captain Marvel and versus Ms. Marvel, how Superman, some of the stories about Superman and some other things with him. So that's one of my Ithaca stories. That's really pretty cool.
Neat.
I knew about Rod Sterling, but I didn't know about that guy. So thank you for that.
Yes. And he's in the phone book even.
There's a phone.
Yeah.
What's that?
When they were publishing those, that's true. Oh man, what was his name? There was another Steve. He was a musician and actor. You know what? It's not Steve Martin. Roger. Oh well, it'll come back. I'll have to email. I'll tell Zach and he'll tell me. But his son lived here, and when Steve Lawrence, maybe Steve Lawrence. Yeah, his son lived here, and so when he passed, this is probably about 15, 20 years ago, and they're like, hey, this guy's a local connection. Call his family. I opened up the phone book and found his son and called his son up. So there's a lot of people around here that you would never know their connections to greater things, except for when things happen. I've yet to have the experience, though. I've heard of others where you're somewhere in another country on the other side of the world and you meet somebody from Ithaca.
Yeah.
I haven't had that happen yet, but I have gotten close. I was in the Bahamas once, and there were some people from Boston who knew people in Ithaca.
one generation away.
There we
Yeah.
go. Yes, instead of 6 degrees of separation,
Right.
like
Yeah.
1.5, maybe 2.
Well, okay, well, thank you again. Nice to see you all. And I don't know, hopefully we'll see some of you on Friday.
Yeah,
Yep.
All right, JR, hit me up if you want to come watch a story with me, all right?
Oh, really? Okay. And I'll hit you up with our list. So if anybody else wants to take in some of the things we have happening during Veterans Week, it'll be
Yeah,
my
for sure.
information.
Yeah, I'll put it on the Facebook page for our group too. So,
Okay, good news. All right.
Okay.
all righty.
you,
Thank you,
JR.
everybody. Appreciate
Thanks
it.
again.
all
Good
right.
seeing you all.